Hello and good evening, everyone. Manu Acharya, and this is Genomics Gupshup. We are now on our 21st episode, and we have a very special guest. We have Michael O'Reilly, who is the founder and CEO of Genomics Personalised Health. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you very, very much for having me.
It's great that I think I managed to see you twice this year. Yes. So I hope that, maybe we can start from the very beginning for our viewers. How did you get into genomics? You got in genomics a long, long time ago. Similar to where I am coming from, but I think maybe it would be helpful to understand, what pulled you into the world of genomics.
I was actually very lucky. So in about the 2010 timeframe, I spent my entire life in early stage technology, and I was invited down to San Diego to advise a company on their marketing, and they were doing early stage science. And it turned out that they were a bioinformatics company. And when I walked through the door, I didn't even know who Illumina was, even though Illumina was literally located like 5 miles away. But one thing led to the other, and I ended up as their VP of BD, and it turned out to be a big break because I realized that genomics was the next big thing. I really think that this is like the biggest thing that's come along since the web. So that company was successfully acquired by a South Korean company. And then incredibly, I went on to be one of the people that organized a company that would do the very first application of commercial quantum computing to genomics. And that's in the 2013, 2014 timeframe when quantum computing was not widely accepted. So it was very, very interesting and very early. And that company's still thriving as more of a science project. It's just a research project at this time, but they're in Janssen Labs in San Diego. But then I went on to do what I thought was a relatively obvious thing, is as the price of sequencing continued to plunge. I went on to be one of the first sort of direct-to-consumer whole genome sequencing service providers. And we started with early adopters, and we're very excited about the long-term potential.
And so the first time you got into genomics was in 2004, 5, or 6?
It was about the 2010 timeframe, if I remember correctly. So not quite as long as you. You're the biggest veteran in the business. Yeah.
That's true. So from 2010 to now, I think genomics has seen a lot of changes, right? And you've been at the heart of, you're right where the action is really in San Diego. So how have you seen this whole field evolve over the last 12 years or so?
I think probably not dissimilar to you. Early on, it was really a research application. And then the objective was to start getting broader adoption in clinical applications for precision medicine. And I think that's been a much slower process than that people initially thought. So, but when we started our company, we wanted to leap ahead to consumer. So in the United States, genetic testing was very well established, but we thought that the price was close enough where we could start whole genome sequencing for consumer. And it turned out that the market was concierge medicine or private medicine. So high net worth individuals interested in longevity defined as quality of life. So that you could sustain a business on that market. But now I think as the price continues to fall, that self-insured employer early adopters is now a possibility. And the reason being is that they have such a big pain point with healthcare costs. I think they're interested in looking at innovative solutions, even though they'll still be a little bit pricey for a while.
So I guess there's a difference in terms of how US healthcare is, you have a lot of insurance compared to India, where a large majority is still paid by the consumer themselves. But I guess insurance is also changing both in India and in the US. And I think healthcare cost will bite somebody or the other, right? I mean, both insurers as well as employers, unless they start taking care of their own health?
So that's a really good question. So in the United States, if you have 500 or more employees, you probably become self-insured, where you're quite literally covering your costs yourself. So and to put that, and why that's a big issue is that if you're a CEO, there's a very good chance your second biggest line item after payroll is healthcare costs. So you've got this big line item, the problem's getting worse. You don't really have any hardcore solutions, like Fitbit and yoga classes isn't really like a solution. So the exciting things about genomics is that it's the initial catalyst and ongoing baseline for a long-term precision wellness roadmap, with the assumption being that most diseases are actually preventable. So over the long term, you could literally take a significant chunk out of healthcare costs with what we refer to as a precision wellness strategy. So as a consumer-facing company, we're much more interested in the future, which we define as precision wellness, as opposed to the past, which would be precision medicine.
Yeah, I've always believed that it is easier to prevent if you do it at the right time, right? And then if you can prevent and you focus on wellness, the chances of you living a much more fulfilled life will be higher. Unless you can always extend life, but whether you're extending it with the right strategies becomes a real problem if you don't have all the tools in your hand, right? And genomics is definitely an area that allows all of us to be able to get access to information which earlier we did not have.
Yeah, I completely agree. So we're really excited about the precision wellness opportunity, and we see genomics as just the initial catalyst and ongoing baseline. Sort of a simple way of looking at it is what you're predisposed to. Then we could start to integrate lifestyle and IoT data, which you're actually doing about it with all your tracking devices. And then the third big category over the short term, I would describe as environmental, how you're impacted by where you live. And I see that as sort of the three initial silos for a long-term precision wellness strategy.
Yeah, I think recently we've started to add both. We were always looking at adding the lifestyle, but we've started adding also the whole blood test data as well. We felt that would allow us to be able to get more concrete clinical information as well, because sometimes people don't know enough about where they are in terms of their own health. They might not know that their sugar level is high enough to be considered as diabetic. So I think we felt that somewhere, because it's relatively easy to be able to do that at home these days, or to be able to send someone to
becoming easier. Yeah.
It becomes easier to be able to do that. One of the other interesting things I noticed on your website was something called as the Genomics as a Service. Now, I remember in Ossimum when we were trying to put this whole pieces of research for pharma companies together. I remember coming up with RAS, which is Research as a Service. So I was fascinated by the whole Genomics as a Service model. Are you the first company to use that term, or is that how did you come up with that?
I don't know. That's a good question. So as a service was such a trendy phrase in the technology in California it's not much creativity there, whether we came up with it or someone else did. But the idea is that we would sequence you once, put your genome in the cloud, and then it would be available in perpetuity for you to run analysis and reporting applications against it. So that's the idea, is that we simply want to get your genome in the cloud and then partner on analysis reporting with best practice companies.
So I guess you're one of the earliest adopters of whole genome sequencing for consumers, right? And I know that while we do at Mapmygenome we have whole genome sequencing, it becomes hard to actually sell this as a service, at least in India at this point of time, right? Because of the cost. So do you think that it is already ready for prime time in the US and maybe hopefully soon in India as well? Or you think that genotyping still has a significant part of that market?
I think it's still early, just to be completely frank with you. So we're really looking for self-insured employers that are visionaries, that want to start with smaller projects as opposed to employee rollouts, like essentially sequencing their executives, and these would be glorified concierge medicine engagements, because they can rationalize the cost for their executives. But our thinking is that we get them interested in the idea, show them the benefits, and then as the price of sequencing continues to plunge, then there's opportunities to do their employers. So, and I'd love your opinion on this as well. So in terms of the actual utility value and actionable information, I really see it as sort of pharmacogenomics. You could definitely get actionability out of today. Cardio cancer, ACMG, maybe not. Polygenic risk score, maybe not. So, we want to be frank with the early adopters that we will give you actionable information through PGX partners, but it's about managing expectations for the short term.
Yeah, I mean, I keep telling people that genomics is one part of the puzzle. It doesn't mean that it's not a diagnosis. When you look at a polygenic.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But
on that point, these are screening tests. These are not clinical diagnostic tests. Yeah.
And like you mentioned also that there is the whole wearable data, there is information that you get about the environment and many other parts of, where you might, your diet and everything else is what also determines all your cardiovascular diseases and diabetes and so on. So I think that's one of the expectations that we all need to be able to actually communicate to the end user or the customers. So how easy do you think it has been for you to be able to create or communicate, and how do you think that whole messaging for science needs to be changed to be able to move from where we were from one size fits all to precision medicine to what you termed as precision wellness?
It's been a challenge, but fortunately we have the experience from the concierge medicine space where you got to a couple of visionary MDs or market influencers, and then they became very good at communicating the message. So we worked a lot with the primary media companies in the concierge medicine space early on. But that's where we're going to have to get with self-insured employers. We're going to have to get to visionary CEOs, because this is, as you described, as a concept cell. They've never heard of this before, and they have no idea. But on the positive side, they're open to the possibility of listening because they've got a big pain point, healthcare costs with no solutions. But we do have to get to visionaries. We want to start small, manage expectations. We position the early projects as pilots as opposed to selling a product. Mm-hmm. And we try to capture their imagination about the possibilities of setting them up for the future where, this is not a platform play. This is not a data grab. We're just providing this service. And we hope that it's in a fashion where everything's open and they can start integrating, multi-omic, lifestyle IoT, environmental. So I really think there's an incredibly exciting 10-year future, and we have to get them excited about that as a possibility.
And I know that many times that when we speak to medical professionals or to the consumer, I think each of that communication is going to be slightly different. But at least in our experience, we found that the simpler we made it, the better it was. Make it actionable, but make it simple to understand. Because I think that becomes sometimes when we are doing science, we forget that the end customer is going to be somebody who might not have had as much exposure to all your complicated markers or many other things. So do you think that if you can simplify and make it for is it different for doctors versus an average consumer, because you're obviously reaching out to consumers, but I'm sure that there are medical professionals involved in that whole process. What is
Yeah,
your?
I would say it's completely different. So the MD tends to be interested in actionability, like, is this going to be useful to me? And clearly, like PGX would be. And then we can't disrupt their day. We can, probably similar to India, the MDs essentially do not have any incremental time. So it's got to be incredibly easy for them to use. And then the consumer, there's a lot of, especially in the United States, there's a lot of concern about privacy and security. So we just, it's described here as the Facebook effect, where people suddenly became very concerned about who owns and controls their data, and that, you know, significantly impacted 23andMe's consumer sales. And that's, and I would like to suggest that's going to be magnified as we enter this sort of Web3 environment, Web3/metaverse, and as Web3 is being defined as read, write, own, where the expectation is that you quite literally own your data. So that's a step farther than just privacy and security. So it's definitely different conversations, and as well as a fluid conversation.
So just for our, you know, people who are watching the show, you know, you mentioned a lot of new things for people, like federated data or metaverse. In this whole space of genomics, can you just, you know, maybe explain what each of this is in simple language?
Sure. So again, we're, you know, the way I like to start the explanation is, back in the day, the web did not come along to make Microsoft, Cisco, and Intel better, the traditional IT business. It came along to do a new thing starting from nothing. So the genomics is going to be incredibly valuable to medicine, delivering on precision medicine, but facing in the other direction, the future, something I know you're also interested. I think precision wellness is going to be a brand new massive economy. And like the web, we're starting from scratch. We often forget that when the web started, we're starting from nothing. So what does that look like over the long term? So the first big step, I think, is precision wellness, getting people open to the possibility that there's evidence-based science approaches to preventing disease that are accessible to the consumer now. And then but then the realities of integrating into the future. So our next big step is that we would like to offer federated data. So you could talk to Microsoft or Amazon today, and they've got federated learning solutions where they get a consortium of hospital systems together, come to agreements around, you know, sharing data, using data. But I think for a consumer application, we're gonna need truly federated data, where to get over these concerns about privacy and security, where Anu's data resides in the cloud and is truly federated. It never actually moves, so that the algorithms from the analysis reporting partners would come in on the blockchain or some other capability, hit the data, get their results, back out with the results, but not back out with the actual data. So, and there's standards bodies working on that, but there's also some out-of-box solutions in other industries that we believe that we can integrate and leverage the hard-won work that's been done in other industries around federated data. And then this is the moonshot. I'll talk about, is it okay to talk about Web3 and metaverse?
Sure, absolutely.
So I don't really think it's as complicated as it sounds, but the LA 28 Summer Olympics are here in Los Angeles, so 6 years from now. So we think it's not too hard for us to evolve the low utility avatar in the metaverse into a high utility digital twin by that time. And it's, if you think about it, it's, if we're federating Anu's genomic and multi-omic data, then her lifestyle and IoT data, and then her environmental data, and we're pointing it to the avatar in the metaverse, starting with just simple genomic, for example, and just your VCF, the 2 gigs, the 1% of you that's unique. So we point it to the avatar that's not dissimilar to the way they traditionally created NFTs. The metadata sits on the blockchain and it points. The data doesn't actually move. So we start there, and then we start pointing lifestyle, we start pointing environmental, and this avatar slowly evolves into a digital twin. So we have no interest in the outside. That's Silicon Valley, Meta, and Hollywood's problem. But we would like to start recreating anew in the metaverse from the inside. And suddenly you've got this digital twin that has increasing amounts of utility value to serve you in your precision wellness roadmap. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So basically, I think, just to summarize, federated data, the data resides in one place. You're basically getting it from different parts when you do have partners or others, but they only get back the part that they need to get back in terms of analysis.
Yeah. So for example, Mapmygenome I'd love to see a world where the genome is federated in the cloud. Mapmygenome is really interested in the 1% of the person that's unique, the VCF. I would love to be able to make that available to Mapmygenome, and they could run any of their analysis reports against that data, as opposed to sending out another collection kit. And then you go in, you do your thing, you get your information that you use for your reports, but you're not actually pulling data out or moving the data. So I think it's a real win-win if we could open up the world where Mapmygenome and any other company, and it would be the individual or the employer's choice. So it's, as opposed to showing up with a proprietary list of tests, you make a whole portfolio of labs available to them, analysis reporting partners.
Yeah, because I think, it doesn't make sense to be constantly creating the same data, because your germline data is not really changing. Right? So
yeah, and
be able to just do it once and then analyze it as many times.
Yeah, exactly, and so the data that's really interesting is what Mapmygenome produces. So the individual would like literally engage you as a customer. There'd be no friction. So the advantages to a company like Mapmygenome would be incremental customers without any acquisition costs, number one, and no sending out spit kits and blah blah blah. And obviously there's some complications in there. There's workflow. This is regulated. You have to do everything right. You have to agree on data quality. But we've already done a beta, so we know we can do this. And I think it's pointing to the future. So.
And the metaverse, we'll get to a point where we'll all start living in a reality of seeing what's going on with our health, really, in terms of, when we put all these data points together. And I think, when we are doing this in Mapmygenome, one of the things was, how do you connect these dots? But I think if you can visualize it also, I think it becomes a lot easier for us to be living, in some ways, a virtual world of, our own health. And I think that will be fascinating.
So why your point is so important, if you don't mind me interjecting. So if looking back again, so the web came along and suddenly the whole world needed this new thing called web pages. The smartphone came along and suddenly the whole world needed this new thing called apps. So the genomes come along, suddenly the whole world needs this new thing called. So we're not sure what it is, but we are sure that it's a new thing. So that's why we're not doing a platform play. We're not looking to the past. We think that there's going to be a new kind of UI that's going to be required for this new thing. And common sense would indicate to me that would be the digital twin in the metaverse. And exactly as you just described, a place where Anu can aggregate all her, environmental, lifestyle, multi-omic, and data sets we cannot even imagine, to an increasingly useful digital twin version of her. And again, this is just pointing, and there's obviously some technical complications in there, but conceptually, this is not that complicated. Small conservative steps. So we're really interested in the idea of, through partnerships, we're always just going to be doing basic whole genome sequencing, but through partnerships, which we've been working on hard, we would really like to deliver on that vision by LA28. And so we're particularly excited about the possibility of working with athletic company or nutrition brands, or because they're going to be sort of the first precision product personalization opportunities, you know, and it's an incredible PR opportunity for them.
So in your opinion, do you think it is from a consumer point of view, since you've been working with corporates and other consumers, do you think that the interest is more in nutrigenomics or just wellness genomics or pharmacogenomics, not the physician, but the consumer, or is it on actually like a health risk, understanding of their health risks?
So another great question. So I would say from the employer's perspective, they're probably the most interested in PGX because there's a potential ROI there, and it just shows them a long-term path. But the consumer, I would suggest, is really interested in nutrition, personalized nutrition. And I mentioned I was at the health conference last week, and I had a good conversation with one of the leaders in the space, and you know, we basically agreed that it's still too early. You know, so you're a very serious scientist. So and Mapmygenome is a very credible company. You don't go out and make all these crazy marketing claims. So, and you could jump on the web today and probably find all kinds of claims out there. But the reality is, it's still pretty early. So, but I really hope that within the next couple of years we can deliver on a a personalized nutrition application. And interestingly enough, it would be the same formula. You know, there's one really good personalized nutrition company here in the United States, and it would be, and I already had the conversation with the CEO. In the future, at one point, would you be willing to take leverage a VCF as opposed to sending out another kit? And it just makes total business sense to them. So the same way that we could partner with the Mapmygenome, we could partner with the nutrition, and then it never stops. All these new use cases comes, and it's just data. So it's again, I'm really excited about the long-term future, and we're just doing the heavy lifting.
So if you have anything else, otherwise I'm going to move to the rapid fire round.
Nope, those are the two big ones.
Okay.
The federated data and the vision for the metaverse. But go ahead.
Okay. So in this, I don't have too many questions for you, but let's, you know, I know that you read books. So which is your favorite genomics book?
Probably the one that everyone says on your show, the Gene by, is it Siddhartha Gupshup? Yeah. Am I slaughtering his name? But I hear his podcasts when he's a guest on people's shows. It's just, I don't know when that guy sleeps, but he's got 3 big jobs and he puts out these great books. And I guess that won the Pulitzer Prize, if I'm not mistaken. But
yeah, and if you were not, I know you started from IT and you moved to genomics, but other than these two, if you were to, you know, if you were going to pursue a career that you would, you know, maybe have done otherwise, alternate career, what would that have been?
I'll be honest with you, I don't know, because why this opportunity is so exciting, and I firmly believe this. And in your generation and my generation, the web changed our relationship with reality, you know, with data. And I think the next generation, starting with the genome, it's going to change people's relationship with their personal biology. They're going to have one for so I quite literally see this as another web size opportunity, you know, and an incredible 10-year run where we can't even imagine what's in front of us in terms of data sets that we're going to be integrating. So it seems, it has that sort, from a innovation or early stage tech or a science perspective, it has that sort of center of the universe feel to it. So I just can't imagine like giving up that opportunity.
And since you were talking about sleep and people not, Siddharth, him not having time, are you a morning person or an evening person? When do you?
I would have to say morning person. Yeah.
All right. All right. Let me think about something else. Which was your worst subject in school?
My worst topic in school,
Worst subject,
statistics.
yeah.
Statistics. It was brutal.
And now you're doing a lot of that with, with
I'm turning to people like you to do a lot of it. We just put raw data to the cloud. We turn to the really smart people like you to do the analysis and the reporting.
All right, great. So I think that was great. It was absolutely fascinating. And if there's anything else that you would like to say, about the future of genomics, or where you've already touched upon a lot of the topics like quantum computing, metaverse, federated data, and so on. So I think you've been at the cutting edge. You've been constantly thinking about where this whole field is going to go. And I think, we all can start seeing that it is certainly heading in that direction. So, we should continue to keep on telling, what possibilities are out there. And I think we will get there soon enough. So thank you very much. And if you have anything else to add, please feel free.
No, the only other thing I'd add is I want to see Mapmygenome go global.
Will do.
You're one of the great companies out there, and I want to see you guys go global.
Thank you so much. Hopefully, I'll see you soon in January.
Sure.
All right, thank you, and let me stop recording.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on your show.